The bold and the beautiful comes to an end. In a storyline steeped in pain, the end has come for Liam. There was no miracle, no last-minute breakthrough, no redemption in a long-running drama. Instead, what viewers witnessed was the slow, painful unraveling of a beloved character's life, a family's hopes, and a doctor's confidence. This wasn't just the death of a character, it was the shattering of dreams, the culmination of unresolved grief, and the beginning of a new legacy forged in grief and guilt. Let's take a look at the tragic end to Liam's journey, the decision that sealed his fate, and the emotional devastation it left behind. For weeks, fans watched Liam struggle. The dizziness, the disorientation, the pounding migraines weren't just tired or stressed. The CT scan confirmed everyone's worst fears, a growing, inoperable brain tumor, combined with a brain hemorrhage that made surgery nearly impossible. Finn, who had done everything he could to explore treatments, therapies, and experimental programs, was forced to admit the grim truth: there was no hope. But Liam wasn't ready to give up. He couldn't give up when there was so much left unsaid, so many people to protect, so many memories to make with his daughters Kelly and Beth. Lying in his hospital bed, Liam could feel his time ticking away. The pain was unbearable. Every waking moment was agony. Every sleeping moment was accompanied by the fear that he might never wake up again. So, in an act both desperate and courageous, Liam called the man he needed more than ever, his father, Bill. Tears welling in his eyes, his voice shaking, Liam begged Bill to sign the consent form for surgery. The doctors warned him that he had only a 20% chance of survival. The tumor was in a dangerous position. Death was almost certain. But for Liam, that 20% was everything. "I can't live like this, Dad. I'd rather die fighting for my life than wait to die." Bill, torn between fear and paternal duty, signed the papers. His hands shook as he did so, knowing that his signature could lead his son to a procedure that no doctor believed would work. Finn was prepared for the highest-stakes surgery of his life. Despite the warnings, despite the odds, he couldn't turn his back on Liam. As a doctor and the husband of Steffi, the mother of Liam's child, Finn bore the weight of everyone's expectations. Inside the operating room, silence reigned as the team worked with pinpoint precision. But the tumor was worse than expected. The bleeding had spread. The pressure on Liam's brain began to spike. His vital signs dropped. Alarms blared. And then the line flattened. Finn emerged from the operating room drenched in sweat, his surgical mask stained, his eyes red. He didn't need to say anything. His expression said it all. Liam was gone. For all his skill, all his training, all the advances in modern medicine, Finn had failed. He collapsed onto a nearby bench, head in his hands, unable to breathe. In that moment, he wasn't just a doctor. He was someone who had tried to save someone he knew, someone he respected. He had promised Steffi he would do anything. But even everything wasn't enough. "I'm so sorry," he whispered to Bill and Steffi, who stood frozen in the hallway. And though no one blamed him, Finn would forever carry the burden of this failure. Back in the waiting room, Bill stood silent. It was the same silence that filled his mind as he picked up his pen to write. The silence that echoed in his chest as he told Liam, "You can do this." And now, that silence was deafening. Bill had always been the man of power, the man of action. He had taken what he wanted, protected his sons, moved mountains when others cowered. But now he was powerless. He had gambled with Liam's life, and he had lost. "I should have said no," he whispered, his voice choking. "I should have held your hand, son, not signed your death warrant." The weight of that choice would never go away. Steffi had spent the past weeks preparing for this moment, and then it hit her like a tsunami. Liam, the man who had given birth to her daughter. The man who had held her through the hardest years, the man who had been in her heart no matter where life had taken them, was gone. She collapsed beside his hospital bed, sobbing into the white sheets. She held his hand, still warm but lifeless, and whispered through her broken sobs, "You should have stayed." For Kelly, for me, there was a scream of regret in her soul. A scream of guilt. A scream of love lost too soon. News of Liam's death spread quickly through the hallways of Forrester Creations and beyond. Hope, upon hearing the news, collapsed to the floor in shock. She sat with Beth afterward, her arms wrapped around her, trying to make sense of the inexplicable. Wyatt had arrived too late to say goodbye. His grief was mixed with anger at the universe, at the doctors, even at Bill. Brooke and Ridge put aside their differences, mourning not just a friend and family member, but the innocence that had been taken from their family circle. And in the midst of it all, the hospital room was quiet. Flowers covered the windowsills. Cards began to arrive. But the man in the middle was no longer there. Plans were made immediately for a memorial. A private family gathering, followed by a public memorial because Liam had touched so many hearts. Eric had asked the Forrester estate to host the funeral. Ridge had written the eulogy. Steffi had chosen Liam's last outfit, a suit he had modeled in a fashion show years ago when he was still full of dreams. The pictures hung on the walls. Liam smiled. Liam laughed. Liam was hugging Beth and Kelly. But no photo can ease the pain. No slideshow can capture the silence he left behind. Now begins the hardest part for all of those left behind, moving forward. Bill can throw himself into his work, or he can disappear entirely, unable to face his role in the final decision. Finn will continue to treat patients, but his confidence will be forever shaken. He can find solace in Steffi's forgiveness, or he can distance himself from her, unable to bear the reminders of his failure. Steffi, who kissed Liam in his final days, now wrestles with her guilt. Will she tell Finn? Will she bury it with the dead man? Hope must raise Beth without her father. She will grieve, yes, but she will also honor Liam by being stronger than ever. And somewhere, a little girl will ask every night, "Can I talk to Daddy in my dreams?" Liam is gone. There are no miracles, no resurrections, no soap opera twists to undo what was done. Just love, heartache, and final goodbyes. But Liam leaves behind more than pain. He leaves behind a daughter who will grow up to hear stories of his laughter. He leaves behind a woman who loved him long after their last kiss. He leaves behind a father who will never forgive himself, and a brother who will always keep his memory alive. He leaves behind a doctor who will never forget the day he couldn't save the woman he loved. And he leaves behind a show forever changed. In the wake of Liam's tragic death, one man stepped up to fill a role that could never truly be replaced, but had to be filled. That man is Dr. Finn, Steffi's husband and Kelly's stepfather. And now, more than ever, he faces the most delicate and defining challenge of his life not in an operating room, but in his own home, alongside a grieving young daughter. This is not just a story about grief, but also about rebuilding trust, reestablishing identity, and walking the thin line between memory and healing. This is the story of what happens to a family when one parent dies and another must step up to replace the irreplaceable. Let's take a deep look at how The Bold and the Beautiful explores one of the most emotional arcs it's ever attempted: Finn's promise to be Kelly's father, the psychological toll on a grieving child, and the unspoken question: can you ever really replace a parent? In the silence that follows Liam's passing, emotions are raw and chaotic. Steffi, barely able to keep her composure, finds herself lying awake most nights, caring for Kelly with a heart full of questions. How will she explain this to her daughter? How will Kelly react? Can she grow up without the father who loved her so fiercely? That's when Finn makes his promise. I'll be her father, Steffi. I'll never let her feel like she's lost everything. The words, though well-intentioned, reverberate like thunder in the room. Finn means it. There was no doubt in Steffi's heart that he meant it. He wasn't trying to replace Liam's memory. He was offering to step into the painful void left behind and be the solid, dependable male figure Kelly would need in the years to come. It was a promise of stability, not replacement. A vow rooted in love, but also a delicate dance between emotional presence and respectful distance from the man he now occupied. While adults understand the finality of death, children experience it differently. For Kelly, losing Liam was like losing the sun in her sky. He was the man who read her bedtime stories, cheered her on in school plays, sat next to her at doctor's appointments, and taught her how to ride her first bike. He was her hero, her emotional anchor. The moment Kelly was told her father wouldn't be coming home was one of the most heartbreaking scenes the show has ever depicted. She didn't cry right away. She just asked, "But who's going to sit with me at lunch?" The innocence of that question shattered everyone in the room. Steffi and Finn held her close, but nothing could have prepared them for the months ahead. Because grief in children doesn't come all at once, it comes in waves. One day, Kelly withdrew, unable to speak. The next day, she throws a tantrum, screaming for her dad, begging to go to the hospital to wake him up. The show takes a painstakingly honest and realistic approach here. Grief counseling sessions, nightmares, school problems, and drawing sad pictures in kindergarten. Kelly's pain is raw, unfiltered, and deeply affecting. As a stepfather, Finn has always respected Liam's place in Kelly's life. He knew that the bond between father and daughter was unbreakable until now. But now, that bond has been severed. And in its place is a man with the best intentions and a heart full of love, but no roadmap to stepping into the role of a dead father without trampling on his memory. Finn tries everything. He picks Kelly up from school. He makes her breakfast in the morning, puts her to bed at night. He told her stories about Liam, hoping to keep the memory alive while helping her transition. He took her to the park, to soccer practice, and even started building a treehouse in the backyard that Liam had always talked about but never got around to doing. But every act of love came with its own pain. Because sometimes Kelly would smile and call him Dad, only to freeze a moment later, her eyes welling with guilt. Other times, she would refuse to talk to him altogether, slamming the door and screaming, "You're not my real dad." And those words cut deeper than any surgical error or professional failure could have. Steffi's pain was twofold. She mourned Liam not just because he was the father of her child, but because a part of her heart had never stopped belonging to him. She buried that pain as best she could, focusing her attention on Kelly and trying to be strong. But she also saw the growing tension between Finn and her daughter. And she didn't know what to do. Encouraging Kelly to accept Finn as her new father made her feel disloyal to Liam. But asking Finn to back off, to slow down, to not pursue a paternity relationship with the child he now lived with, was equally cruel. So she did the only thing she could do. She tried to mediate. She sat with Kelly during their late-night conversations, gently explaining that Liam would always be her father, but that Finn loved her too, and that it was okay to let herself be loved again. She reminded Finn that the road ahead would be long, that Kelly needed time, that love couldn't be rushed, and that no one, not even him, could fill the void Liam left. But maybe, just maybe, he could light a lantern next to it. A few weeks after the funeral, with Kelly still grieving and Bill Spencer increasingly absent and grieving, Steffi made a difficult but necessary decision. She made Finn Kelly's legal father. It wasn't just a gesture. It was a statement. a signal that she was choosing to build a future with Finn not just emotionally, but as a family. There was pushback, especially from the Spencer family. Wyatt questioned it. Phil exploded, accusing Steffy of trying to erase Liam from her life. But Steffy remained steadfast. No one can replace Liam. No one can. But Kelly needs a father, a living, present, loving father. And Finn is that man. And just like that, with a judge's signature and a broken heart, Finn became Kelly's father in the eyes of the law. Legally, the battle was over. But emotionally, the journey had only just begun. Kelly, now old enough to understand the difference between a legal document and a beating heart, had to decide whether she could open herself up again. For months, she continued to struggle. She clung to pictures of her father. She kept asking the same questions over and over again. Why did Dad have to die? And if I let Finn be my dad, does that mean I'm forgetting my real dad? In one powerful episode, Finn pulled Kelly aside one afternoon and said, "I don't want to replace your dad. I just want to be here for you, like Dad would want me to be. If you ever want to talk about Dad, or miss him, or just want to cry, I'm right here." That day, for the first time in weeks, Kelly hugged Finn and didn't let go. She didn't call him Dad. Not yet. But she whispered, "Thank you." And to Finn, that meant everything.